welcome you to Dr. Casper Live. I hope you're ready and join us as we populate this video. I ask you to let us know where you're from, let us know who's online as we push this out there. So join me as we push this video out there on Dr. Casper Live. Let somebody know we are live, let somebody know that we're doing this. So join me, tag a friend, tell them today's topic is how to deal with fear and anxiety. So I'm just populating the video out there and we will start shortly but surely. So again, populate the video, let people know we're live. I welcome you here today. I know this is going to be a great session. I think one of the biggest challenges that most of us have is trying to overcome and to assess. So today we talk about what is fear. We properly define it. We talk about how it masks itself. And then we talk about how to overcome, how to get to the next level. And so I thank you for joining me here today. Again, let somebody know we are live. Populate this video. And I know it's going to change somebody's life. It's going to make a difference. And that's what we want to keep doing as we populate. So just join me here today as we populate this video out there. Tag a friend, let them know. Even if it's a rerun, let us know where you're from. Let us know where you're from. Let us know who's online with us. And so just join us. We are sharing this video out there. Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I see we have people here. Let us know who you are. Welcome, Glory and Draguna. Thank you for joining us here today. Very good. All right. Tag a friend. Let us, even if it's a rerun, let us know who you are. Let us know who's checking this story out. All right. Put all your groups, all your friends. Let them know we're here. Again, I'm sharing it out there. Keep on sharing and commenting and letting people know we are here. We are live. All right. Thank you so much again. My name is Dr. Casper of Actualize Systems. Thank you for joining me here today. I'll go ahead and start. We have populated the video out there. Please tag a friend, let them know we're live, let them know we're here together. So again, as I said, today's topic is actualizing despite fear and anxiety. And as I said, there are many things that try to stop us, mitigate our progress, and fear tends to be up there, and with its brother called anxiety. And so we must first start by diagnosing this problem. We have to talk about how do we move on forward despite this. Now, as I mentioned, my name is Dr. Casper. Actualize, I'm the director of Actualize Platforms. It's a platform that works to empower people, and that is through career development, personal empowerment, and business growth. We have conferences we hold. In fact, I'll be talking about the Actualize conference that's coming in March. Actually, only about 3 weeks left, and then we'll be moving to March 7th, the Actualize conference at the Richardson Civic Center. We have such a great lineup. Some of them were online. We even shared in our group from Millicent Yangon, who's an excellent businesswoman and multi-marketer, Bravesh, Mr. Bravesh, Mrs. Lola, who are good in investments, both major investments and even the smaller investments. Lola is Vice President of Guaranteed Rate, and she does actually loan origination. So knowing what a loan officer looks for, right? When you want to invest in a condo or something, we have an awesome lineup. Dr. Milka, who has excelled in her career. We have Ann Kiambi, who has originated over $1 million in nonprofit grants. And so we have all these great, excellent speakers coming. We'll have panels with them, we'll interact, and most importantly, we'll network amongst each other. So again, if this is something of interest, I want you to register for it. Again, it's only 3 weeks left. Go to actualizenation.eventbrite.com or Cash App $Casper Kamau, Cash App $Casper Kamau. Register today. For more information, I'll talk at the end, but you can also go to iamactualize.com to get more information about the conference, about what we do, and why we are so passionate about actualizing in life holistically, right? We want to actualize holistically. And so, here, welcome to Actualize. It's great and awesome to see you here. So let's continue with our discussion today. We're talking about how to overcome, how to actualize despite fear and despite anxiety. Again, continue to let us know where you're from. If you have a friend, tag them. Today's topic is hot. It's great, it's honest, it's open, and it's transparent. I just copied that from a friend. So today's topic is really good, it's really important, and I believe we all need it. So jump in, put in your comments as we continue. So to start off with, today I'll be talking about fear and anxiety, but not from what has been very popular, which is important and necessary, but I feel it has been covered enough. And that is defining fear as false evidence appearing real, right? So there's a lot of talks on that. I'm sure you can go find them, where it talks about fear as a false perception, right? So defining it as false evidence appearing real, right? So afraid of something that might happen, so how that can freeze you. So there's a lot of discussion around that, right? So, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, I want to talk about when it's actually real, right? When the bank has called in the loan, when the credit is over the limits, when you're facing your giants, your Goliaths, when you know Monday is coming and there is no job to go to. That's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about not the false evidence appearing real, which is very important and necessary to talk about, but we're going to talk about fear and anxiety today on the basis of an actual impeding situation or a situation that you're actually in, when the situation has actually found you, that it's in your front door, when that partner has betrayed you or walked away, when, as I said, there's bankruptcy, when the hospital bill comes, when life happens, right? That's the fear that comes. That's what we want to talk about, and how to walk through that, how to actualize despite that. And that is why we actually have the Actualize conference. Not only to be able to do well when everything is going our way, but how to do well when things don't seem to go our way, when when you're in the middle of a storm and everything is shaking. That's what we want to talk about, right? And so join me here today as we continue talking about what to do, where to go, how to act, and how to be when the situation is live and real and in front of you. The first thing that I want to talk about is the X equals Y, the cause of fear, right? So in this situation, before we get into defining, for those who are joining Dr. Casper Live for the first time, I love to define things. I like to get into the definition of the words that we're going to talk about. And by defining, I believe it gives us the foundation in order to talk and to build on a discussion. So first, I want to talk about the cause behind the fear and the anxiety. And I define the cause as a disruption of normalcy or of positive expectation. The disruption of normalcy. In other words, hey, you had a job every day, every 5 days a week. Now there's a disruption and there's no more work. The health was good, the business partnership was working, the organization was good, and then the normal shifted. Now there's a disruption. That's what we're talking about today. What happens when there's a disruption, right? That leads to fear. Or a disruption on positive expectation. You are expecting a profit. You are expecting somebody to come through for you. And if you live long enough, you will find yourself in one of the two. Either a disruption in your normalcy or a disruption on your positive expectations. Now, when those situations happen, those are what I would like to call the causes behind the fear. So first, before we can talk about the definition of fear, first we have to talk about the cause, the situation. So that's the first step. Now, because we have defined the cause, let's now talk about fear. And there's a few words I want to look at. When I was very young, when I was 7 years old, we had an album, the old school album, vinyl albums, and there was a small one, a smaller size album, and I used to love to listen to it. We had a record player, and it was for kids songs, and one of the songs that I can always remember, it always said, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be terrified, do not fear, do not be discouraged or dismayed, for I am with you wherever you go." And so from a young age, I always heard this song, and it was a song that I can still remember to this day, which talked about do not fear and do not be dismayed. Do not fear and do not be dismayed. And it was until later that I found that it was actually a song from a famous book called Joshua, and it came from the first chapter of the book. All over the first chapter of the book, especially verse 9 of that book. And so it led me later on to try and examine what is fear, what is dismay. And so today we'll define it, we'll look at the root words on how they come about and how that affects our definition of fear and our causality of fear. And then that will help us jump into the discussion of what to do about fear. So let's begin. Fear comes from an old Saxon word, far, which means an ambush or a harm, distress, and deception. So something that is like an ambush, right? A situation of ambush. It also comes from a root word pa, which means risk. It also progressed over time to a Proto-Germanic word, which is fres, which means danger. All right, so listen to those words: ambush, danger, harm. And also in Middle English, we find the word fa, which means calamity or sudden danger, peril or a sudden attack. So welcome Beth Mwangi to Actualize Dr. Casper Live as we talk about defining the root of what fear means, the root word of fear. So when we look at fear, it refers to an impeding or sudden harm, risk, or danger that you are facing, right? So again, the very definition of fear comes from the situation. Remember, we talked about what causes fear. So impeding or sudden harm. So as I said, today we're not talking about false evidence appearing real, but when you can actually see it, you actually see the danger at your front door, or maybe the danger is already in your house, right? Things are very rocky. That's the cause of fear. The other word that I want us to talk about is dismay, right? There's this word, and I hear people say it, sometimes it's in songs, and I was like, what exactly is dismay? It's very interesting that dismay from the 1300s means to become alarmed, upset, frightened, to be broken down, when your courage is broken down. In another definition says the breakdown of courage. Imagine something that takes away your courage, okay? Something that divests your power and ability. Last time we talked about process, and that you need a lot of energy and power to endure a process of becoming. And what dismay does, which is a close relative of fear, is that it paralyzes you, right? So something that removes your power and ability to move forward, something that breaks down your courage to endure, right? And so when we look at, that's a very good definition to understand, because we have to understand what's actually happening with me when I'm in this situation. my courage is gone, when my power is removed, right? And this is why people are encouraged not to fear. Another word we talked about is anxiety, in the definition of anxiety. Now, anxiety is also an important word to understand. We have defined fear, we have defined dismay. Now let's define anxiety. What exactly is anxiety? Now, I define anxiety as mental and physical freezing. Something that chokes you, and which is caused by uncertainty. Now, it comes from a Proto-Indo-European word which means to be painfully constrained. Listen to that. To be painfully constrained by a word that, if I can say it correct, it's ang. To be painfully constrained. Close to it, another word that is almost, that's also angry, which means to choke, to squeeze, figuratively, to torment. Something that torments you. And that's actually where we get the word anxiety. To be anxious, to be uneasy, to be troubled, right? And so all these words that we are defining today are actually explaining not only the situation that leads to fear, but what is actually happening within us. So if I was to bring all of that, right, bring all those explanations and definitions into one, I would say that fear is the mental and physical freezing and the reduction of one's power and ability to do something because of the disruption of normalcy or of positive expectation. Now, I have put in everything we've talked about, right, into one sentence. I'll repeat it. It is the mental and physical freezing. It means you feel like your life has frozen, has stopped, you've been choked. And the divesting or reduction of your power and ability. In other words, your own energy, your ability to do something is stopped because of a situation that has disrupted your normalcy or has stopped your positive expectation. Now, if you live long enough, as I said, that will happen, right? You were expecting to get a job and it didn't go through. You got fired. A partner left. You maybe expected a major turnout to your event and things didn't happen the way you wanted. A relationship goes bad. A positive expectation that did not work. And so there's a really major, we can all relate from different spheres of life of what this thing really is and where it comes from. And I believe that is the foundation. And because if you don't have a good foundation of your enemy and what you're dealing with, you won't know how to take the proper and right steps. And as we continue with this discussion, you'll come to discover why it was important for us to go step by step in defining fear, right? Fear, in determining what fear is as an impeding and sudden harm and danger, right? Not just a perception. We're talking about today fear that is real. Goliath is calling you out. We're talking about dismay, something that is breaking away your courage, right? Your own energy. You don't want to leave your bedroom. We talk about anxiety, which comes from, if you've seen the definition, mental and physical choking, freezing, something that is constraining, right? And so when we put all of that together, you realize how powerful fear is as a weapon. How, if you really look at the best, how some boxers deal with their enemies, right? Somebody who boxes, right? Or somebody who plays sports. What you find is some of the best athletes know how to cause fear with their words. When you hear, like, and I don't know how it is, some of the people who trash talk, we call it trash talking the best. Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, a lot of these great athletes put fear in you before they even face you, right? And why? Because there's an idea or an understanding where if you have fear, you can freeze someone with fear, with your own words. You can freeze them and beat them before you even start a contest. That's why we have to talk about how to break through and to walk through despite fear and anxiety. Now that we have defined it, let's now start taking the steps in understanding this better. Now, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to go into the hospital of diagnosis. We have to diagnose the symptoms of fear in order to know whether we are operating from fear. Because the challenge is most of us think that we do not have fear because we are doing action, because we are moving forward. We think fear is just somebody shaking in the corner. But I would like to let you know today, as we talk about fear, that many of us actually have symptoms of fear, but we actually don't understand that we are operating from fear rather than courage. So we'll first talk about, we're going to diagnose the masks or the masking of fear. After we've diagnosed and talked about the masking of fear, we're going to now get into a discussion of what to do about fear and anxiety. So thank you, and please share, let people know what we're talking about today. Rhoda Chegeman, we welcome you. Jackson Zioki, Mary Jomo, we welcome you, Mrs. Maora, and everybody who has joined us as we are on Dr. Casper Live today, and as we continue to talk about this very necessary and important discussion on fear and anxiety. Two twins plus dismay, three relatives actually, that harm people's ability to progress forward and to accomplish their purpose, their vision, and their mission in life. All right. As I said, we are about to enter the hospital. All right, we're about to enter the hospital to get a diagnosis. So hang in there. It's important. This is time for you to do a personal reflection, to diagnose yourself and to see whether you're operating from courage or from fear. As I said, sometimes we operate from fear, but because we don't understand the symptoms. Now, I would like to say that there are two categories. There may be more, but we'll stick to two. There are those who freeze. We'll call them freezers. People who freeze, right? When they enter. Andrew Apro, welcome to Dr. Casper Live. There are people who freeze, and then there are those who cope. And we're going to diagnose and see, am I a freezing person? Do I freeze, or am I coping? And many times I would like to say these things are masks that make us think we're not operating from fear, but we're actually operating from fear. So let's diagnose, and then we'll carry on from there. So we'll start with freezing. Now, if you're like me, the first type of person who freezes is a person who gets lost in their thoughts. If you're like me, when there's actual fear, you find yourself in vain imaginations. You just get lost for time. You're just sitting there trying to imagine, what if life was different? You start to imagine and start to think about things that can't even make a difference. So if you're a freezer, you get lost into your own thoughts. You find you've spent minutes or hours just lost in your own thoughts. That's one diagnosis to tell you that there is fear that is operating in you. The other person is, and part of, either you get lost in your mind. Another way that people have started coping today is using social media. Because what it helps you get lost so that you're not now in your thoughts. You find yourself, it becomes so important, you're binge watching, right? All of a sudden it's so important for you to finish this series, right? So you get lost in binge watching, you get lost on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever you just get lost. So in order to not deal with the fear, remember, fear being caused by a disruption to your normalcy in life or a disruption of a positive expectation, you now look for something, because you're frozen, to move your thoughts away, right? So again, you get lost in your own thoughts, or you get lost in social media, right? You get lost in binge watching. The other thing that you can also show you that you're operating from fear is insomnia, right? Sometimes you may get lost so much into your thoughts and the situation, you cannot sleep, you cannot rest. And so when you don't have any sleep, one of the things you need to ask yourself, is there something going on? Is there a fear in my life? Is there a situation that is disrupting me? So the first type of person who freezes, right, diagnosis, you either find yourself in danger of lost in your thoughts, you find yourself getting busy in things that don't add any value, you just binge watching things, you're lost in social media for hours, or you cannot sleep. You find yourself with insomnia, no rest, right? And if I found myself in all three, right? Sometimes it's 2 o'clock, you cannot sleep because you're constantly worrying about. So again, that's diagnosis that there's fear. There might be fear operating behind these things. Another thing that causes freezing is isolation, right? Isolation, where you now remove yourself. I don't need anybody. You start removing yourself from people, which may actually lead to depression. It might lead to, it looks like a temporary relief. It looks like you feel relieved. I just want to move away to my cave. But the challenge is that there may be fear behind that. So you have to also diagnose what is going on with me, right? Again, I'm not saying all these things are only caused by fear. I'm just saying the people who freeze when they enter into a situation that causes fear, that these are ways of masking what's going on, right? You isolate yourself, and you think that's going to be a solution, right? You just want to go into your cave. And then there are people who actually get frozen permanently, right? In other words, you completely go into I don't trust anybody mode, right? No trust, right? So you don't understand why you don't trust, but there is the aspect of fear behind you, or risk avoidance, right? Because of something that happened, you're now in a permanent state of fearing risks, right? Hey, you know you're supposed to take a step and start that organization. You know you're supposed to take that step and in risking, in starting a business, in joining a career, maybe going back to school. But because of that situation that caused a disruption, all of a sudden you find yourself avoiding every type of risk. I remember one person came to me one time and we were talking about a business, and they told me, they asked me, is there any risk? Well, there's always a risk in life. Getting married is risky. Having children is risky. Everything has a risk, right? But if you find yourself frozen where you cannot take a step forward in anything, that there might be fear behind that. Again, we are diagnosing people who freeze. Another thing that you can actually find is anger and rage. You have an anger and a rage that makes you think you're courageous, right? It makes you feel like you're bold, but it's actually fear. You actually have not dealt with some type of fear, some type of anxiety, some type of dismay in your life, so you're full of anger and rage, and you think that anger and rage is actually showing how strong and powerful you are, but it's actually a fear, right? A fear. There's a fear that's going on that you have not dealt with. So again, this is the first type of a person who freezes. They get lost in you might be the person who gets lost in your thoughts. You find yourself binge watching or getting lost in social media. Maybe you cannot sleep or rest. You isolate, or you find yourself in a permanent state where you cannot trust anybody. You may be the person who avoids risks at all costs, or a person who's full of rage and anger, trying to mask, right? You're trying to mask fear, so it comes out with rage, anger, control, right? So that's the first type of person, right? Again, for those who are joining us, we have just entered the hospital of diagnosing the masks of fear, symptoms that have fear. Again, you can always comment, let us know where you're from, and maybe you have your own thoughts about what are some things that we hide. What are some things that mask the fears in our lives? Now, the other type of a person is who we call a coping person, right? Now, person who copes. Now, the way you cope with fear, the first thing I want to talk about is this generational coping. What do I mean by that? We cope based on what we saw. So many people will cope with fear and anxiety the same way they saw their parents, their uncles, or their relatives deal with fear and anxiety, right? So that's something very important I want to put out there. So if you look at how your parents dealt with fear and anxiety, or somebody who was close who influenced you, you may actually start behaving like them. And so it's important to check yourself when you behave in certain ways. What do I mean? Maybe you're the busy person, right? Maybe I do that I found myself doing that once in a while, where you get yourself busy doing things that have nothing to do, they don't add value. So maybe you start cleaning everything. You just get busy. You're coping. You're looking for ways to cope. Or maybe you're the planner, right? You start planning and planning and planning and repeating things. But as one person called Solomon Wiseman, a friend of mine, says, in the first step is to stop digging. You're already in a hole. Stop digging. Stop. And that's the problem with what I would call busy people, right? You're not understanding that there's fear behind what you're doing. So you get yourself busy and you think you are operationalizing in the right way, but it's actually masking the fear and anxiety that you have, right? The other person who copes is a person who harms themselves or harms others. What do I mean? Things that suppress the fear and anxiety. You get into drugs, right? Alcohol, drugs, wrong relationships, right? Or going and looking at negative things, self-abusing. Sometimes there's fear and anxiety behind that. And so it can even lead to lack of self-control, because some of these things can be addictive. And so another way people cope with fear and some of the symptoms is to look for things that can help suppress. So drugs, alcohol, wrong relationships. Another way of coping is unnecessary micromanagement, right? And refusing to take personal responsibility, right? Sometimes when you have that fear and anxiety, normally, and this comes from, remember the freezing person who has no trust anymore, right? Maybe something hurt you, you no longer want risks. Yes, it's very easy to become a micromanager, micromanaging everything because of that fear. So again, we've just talked about two things. Diagnose yourself. Are you the person who freezes? Are you the person who copes? Sometimes you might not think that it's caused by fear and anxiety, but the truth of the matter is, yes, sometimes the fear and anxiety comes in, especially when something disrupts your life, right? So first we have to look and say, am I hiding what's going on in my life, right? Now that you have diagnosed yourself, and again, you have to stop. I cannot repeat that as many times as possible. You have to stop. Now, we have defined what fear is. We have talked about the reality that we mask fears and anxieties in our lives by either freezing and not realizing that we are frozen, or by coping. We look for coping mechanisms. And I've mentioned they can come out in so many ways, right? We even talked about fear and rage. All of a sudden, you start yelling at your loved ones. You start yelling at your kids. You start yelling at your wife. You start blaming everybody. You people did this. Those people did that. You are full of rage. You're full of anger. You're full but all of it really is fear, right? Fear of expectations. Maybe you thought you'd be somewhere else in life at this point, and you're afraid because, oh my God, time is time is moving. Or, oh man, I thought I would have saved this much money. I thought I would be out of debt. So because the situations around you, again, remember, the cause of fear is disruption of normalcy. In other words, you have defined normalcy as something and it's no longer that. Or you expected something to happen that's positive in your life and it did not happen. And so when those two things happen, all of a sudden, it's human. First of all, let me say that. It's not to be inhuman. It's human to naturally go and either freeze or cope. But today we're talking about walking through, not coping, not freezing. So now we talk about how to deal with it. How to deal with it. How to deal with it. Now, let me say this. Courage, faith, strength is not tested on perception. You don't say I'm courageous because you were not afraid of something that did not happen. Courage is tested in fire. Courage, faith, strength is tested in fire. In other words, it's not a perception. It's when you face fear while feeling anxiety by breaking through. All right, let me say that. Courage is not the absence of facing fear or seeing fear or feeling anxiety. Courage is being able to walk through despite having fear and anxiety stare at you. Right? So, why is this important? It's important because while it may not be the most exciting discussion, right? Maybe, hey, how to be a millionaire, how to write your vision, how to write your purpose. It's because unless we have this discussion, you're frozen. You think you're doing the right things, but you're coping. So in order to move from frozen to finish, which is the motto of Actualize, you find yourself frozen. So moving from frozen to finish, to be able to break away from mental and physical freezing and choking, we must do these things. And I list 7 things that we can do in order to move and walk through. Number 1, rest and relax. Again, stop the engine. Turn it off. Rest and relax. Hey, we're not talking about perception. We're talking about things that have actually happened. Okay, it's happened. There's nothing you can do about it. It's happened. The bank has called in. The hospital has sent the bill. Your partner cheated you, walked away. It's happened. Right? Life happened. Stop. Relax. Why? Because unless you rest and relax, you will not be able to start. Right? You'll start freezing or you'll start coping. You'll get yourself busy. You'll start doing all sorts of things. So the first thing is turn the engine off. Rest and relax. And no matter how you do it, don't go into negativity. Whether it's a whole day, a week off, take yourself to a coffee date. Take yourself to a coffee date. Go walk in the park. Avoidance of noise and distraction. Just disruption. Just stop and relax. That's number 1. Stop and relax. Number 2, say it's okay. It's okay. It's happened. Say to yourself, it's okay. Breathe in and then say, now I can. Now, all these are important exercises because it starts from the inside out. You cannot avoid it. So rest and relax. Number 1. Number 2, say it's okay. It is well. It is well. What has happened, it's okay. Now it's time for me to breathe in and say, I can. Why? Because you need to hear yourself say, I can get out of this. I can be able to move forward. Life is not over. I don't care which type of dungeon you're in, right? Because, hey, sometimes it happens. You're now in the lion's den. You're right before the fire. Your judgment has been declared. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. But you can stop, relax, breathe in, say, okay. Which now that helps you to stop and think. Now, which is number 3. Positively recess and assess where you are. Since you've stopped, since you have no distractions, now you can hear your thoughts. One person said the reason why we are so busy in today's world, we have social media. You get home, you turn your TV on. Your TV is a computer. You have YouTube, you have Netflix, when you're tired of that, there's Facebook, there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's Snapchat. When you're done with that, you have your partner, you have your children, what that does is you actually never hear what's going on in your mind. Until you're able to stop, then you'll be able to hear your thoughts. That's why you can't sleep at night. You can't sleep because when you go to your room, that's the first time you're hearing what's going on in your mind. When you close your eyes, there's no music, there's no distraction. All of a sudden, you start hearing your own mind speak back to you. So that's why it's so important to positively recess and assess where you are. Who are you right now? Where is your mind right now? What's going on in your thoughts? Because when you hear your thoughts, then you'll finally understand what fears are going on. What fear do I have? Why have I been yelling at my wife? Why have I been yelling at my kids? Why have I not been sleeping? Why have I been busy doing this, that, and the other? When you stop, you can finally hear your thoughts and know what is the cause of this fear, right? Is it fear that I'm afraid I cannot make my bills at the end of the month? Is it fear of timeline? Is it fear that I've not achieved what society has told me I'm supposed to achieve at this point in my life? Is it fear that what I'm doing in life is actually not my purpose and I'm not sure what my legacy is? Is it fear that my children are going to do well? Is it fear that my investments may not go well? When you stop, you can finally hear your thoughts. You can finally assess yourself. And then that's number 3. Number 4. Okay, I have very few time left because Kingdom Zoomer starts in 10 minutes. So number 4, let me move faster. Here's an exercise that I would recommend. Write the opposite of how you feel. Take a piece of paper and write your I ams. So if you feel broke, write I am rich. If you feel broken, write I am strong. I am successful, right? So write the opposites of what you feel. Now that's a really good mental exercise. And I would recommend I am strong, I am well, I am a good person, I am a good man, I am. Recite your I ams, read them while you're going through this time, because you need to hear yourself speak the opposite of what, because the fear and anxiety are speaking. When you hear your thoughts, they're going to tell you, I am broke, I'm in bankruptcy, my business just failed, my marriage is going down, my business partnership went down. You have to counter it. I am strong, I am rich, I am courageous, I'm able to make it, I am strong, I am mighty, I am able, when you continually recite what you are, you start countering your thoughts. You'll create new nerve pathways that reinforce and create a positive, and it'll actually uplift yourself. You'll start uplifting yourself, right? For those who pray, this is the right way to, this is the time you want to pray. This is the time you need to remember victories that you've had in the past. Well, yes, I'm broke right now, but I remember when I made this much money. I may feel bad, but I remember when I did this. I remember when I got through that. So it's time to remember your past victories, and it's time to write positive expectations. So that's number 4. When you're able to get there, then number 5, assess anything, any role you had to play. Now, I'm not saying that in every situation that you made or you are the cause, but accept if you caused your situation to happen. Again, one of the things about fear is fear and anxiety leads us to blame others. But it's good to stop and ask oneself, did I actually have a role to play in the situation I'm in? Yes, other people may have other roles, but you have to first assess yourself. What did I do? Because unless you reach a point and actually be able to assess and say, what was my role in the disruption in my life, you will not be able to move forward. So assess, did you have a role to play? If you did, then go back to I ams. Yes, I did this, but I'm going to change, right? Number 6, plan. We've talked about past videos, we've talked about purpose, we've talked about vision, we've talked about systems. You can go watch all those videos. You need to plan. Now, remember, we didn't start by planning yourself out of fear and anxiety. We started with all those other steps. So at number 6, this is the time to start planning. Another important thing about planning is understanding time. You may not be able to get out of this situation anytime soon. That's okay. So give yourself time. Don't rush it. Number 2, change your environment if your environment has anything to do with the disposition that you find yourself. That includes your friends and the places you are. Remove negative people, negative friends out of your pathway because you need to recover. All right? So if you have any places or people which are keeping you in this disruption, you need to move them. Then number 7 and final, reach out. Remove your ego and your pride. Assess who you need. Assess the community you need to be a part of. Assess yourself. Who do I need? What community? That's also very important in your recovery. Remember, you have diagnosed yourself in the symptoms behind that are masking the fear and anxiety in your life. Now you've taken the 7 steps. Finally, after you've taken the 7 steps, also assess what type of community you need to walk into. Because none of us is created to be an island. Human beings are communal beings. They're not individualistic beings. Anytime they try to be too individualistic, it doesn't work out. So you need to figure out what community and who you need around you.